Coming to paperback and e-readers in 2021, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks on a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business in 2021 at online booksellers everywhere. Actress Halle Berry says she is trying to teach her son to avoid gender stereotypes. And your Halle Berry believes that if she goes out here and teaches her son about things like sexism and gender roles at 7 years old, she will raise a son who will grow up to become a more enlightened man. Unfortunately, your Halle Berry really has not studied the history of feminism, and she has not studied what has happened over the last 50 years as related to masculinity and manhood. And what she doesn't understand is when you go out here and raise a male in a single mother household like she has, what you do when in your efforts to try to raise this boy to be more so-called enlightened is create a beta male like the ones I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And what happens to many of these males who grow up in single mother households or divorced households like the one Halle Berry established with the child's father, Oliver Martinez, is you wind up creating one of these beta males, a male who becomes a ticking time bomb and eventually grows up to become a man in crisis. Now, many of the single mothers, like the ones the Halle Berry is, they think that they can go out here and raise a boy to be a man on their own. And oftentimes, they think they can go out here and raise this boy to become more enlightened as related to so-called sexism. But what they do is, as they're creating this beta male, create a male who will wind up becoming more of a misogynist than a boy who grew up in a two-parent home with traditional roles. Because what happens in many cases with these males who grow up in these single mother households without an active father in their life, they grow up with these so-called sensitivities and understandings as related to women that they think are related to women. But what they don't understand is they have been raised from a female and gynocentric perspective, and that female and gynocentric perspective oftentimes leads to them winding up with an unbalanced picture of the world. And because they see the world through the eyes of a woman, oftentimes they don't understand their role as a man. And what happens is these males, they wind up falling apart in life because they don't know how to navigate a course in the world as a man. And because they don't know how to navigate a course in the world as a man, they try to be Mr. Sensitive and Mr. Understanding, and what they do is become the kind of male that turns most women off, because what happens is most women are not looking for a male to be one of these soft, effeminate, and very sensitive guys. What happens is most women are attracted to manhood and masculinity, and most men want to have a man who is masculine and understands his role as a man. But this male, what happens is he appears to be so enlightened, but what happens is many of these males, they really don't understand their role as a man. And when they go out into the world with all of this female socialization, what happens is they wind up becoming extremely frustrated. They wind up becoming extremely angry. And the main reason why they become so frustrated and angry is because their single mother has raised them to believe the world works a certain way from her rose-colored perspective, but then they wind up running into a reality where men are expecting him to understand his role as a leader and an authority figure, and women are expecting him to take a leadership role, but he's growing up believing that women can be leaders, and what happens is he winds up making it where many women want nothing to do with him because he's not taking the lead as a man in the relationship, and he's not taking charge in the relationship, and many bosses don't want him on the job because he's one of those soft guys they can easily take advantage of. And many of these women out here, they think they're raising their boy to become this extremely enlightened man, but what happens is as this boy goes out into the world, he becomes more and more angry because he winds up going out into a world where he has to deal with a reality where men are expected to play certain roles and they are expected to do certain things, and he doesn't know how to do these things. He only knows how to behave the way the females taught him how to behave, and he thinks that this feminine way is going to make things work for him. But what he doesn't understand is the world works differently for men than it does women, and the way a man survives in the world is completely different than the way a woman survives, because your females, like your Halle Berry, they have safety nets to protect them, but many men out here don't. So the way he has to learn how to survive in the world is completely different, and if he does not learn the male life skills for survival, what happens is this man is going to have a hard time in the real world. And many of these women back in the 60s, they thought they were raising their boys to become these more sensitive and enlightened men, but what happened was they created 2 to 3 generations of these beta males, and these beta males have been having a hard time surviving in the world ever since they were socially engineered to be these so-called nice guys. But what these nice guys don't have is a masculine presence, masculine energy, nor do they have the intangibles of manhood like self-confidence, nor do they have the ability to persevere in the face of a failure. And because they don't have these abilities that usually a father instills in a son, what happens is these boys wind up going out into the world, they wind up falling completely apart, and they wind up being filled with a whole lot of anger because they simmer and boil in that anger for years. And sadly, what happens in many cases is many of these males wind up exploding in a rage because they were told the world worked one way by their mother, but when they went out into the real world, they found out that people expected a whole different set of things from them, and they're not able to deliver on those things by themselves because there was no father in the home to teach him those male life skills that the single mother considered to be so-called sexist. But subconsciously, this woman like Halle Berry may have daddy issues from her own father, and possibly daddy issues from the father she had this kid with. And because she has issues with male authority and male authority figures, she thinks that by raising her son to be enlightened, it's going to be something positive passively, but aggressively, she's making a complete mess of this boy's life because this boy is not learning the necessary skills that will enable him to be able to survive in the world. Because many of the so-called sensitive, more understanding nice guys, these are the guys who have the hardest time out here, and they don't really know how to navigate a course for themselves. These are the men who wind up winding up becoming abusers of women because they become frustrated about relationships, or they wind up becoming the men who never really achieve or accomplish something because they're too afraid to take a risk. Because most beta males, they are raised by their mothers to be the sensitive and caring guys, but what happens is they don't understand the world doesn't need a sensitive and caring man. No, the world needs a man who understands that the world is hard, the world is rough, and you need to do your push-ups in order to survive in it, and you need to build your discipline and resolve in order to be able to control your emotions so that you won't be out here acting on your impulses and do things that lead to you winding up having to suffer horrible consequences. Because I have seen over the last 47 years of my life many of these guys who were raised out here to become these so-called enlightened beta males, and many of them fill our prison system. Many of them are drug addicts. Many of them struggle to survive. And the reason why they struggle to survive is because many mothers out here thought they were going to raise a better son than their fathers. And what happens is they didn't understand a boy needs to be like his father in order to survive. They're thinking, oh, I can raise this boy to be a better man than his dad. But you can't do that without the dad, because in God's natural order, he created the man first. He created the man to be the steward. He created the man to be the head. And only the man knows how to be a man. And he was taught that by God. And when you deny your son access to a father, what happens is you're not going to raise a better man. You're going to create a beta male monster who goes out here submitting to female authority and female authority figures and does not know how to navigate the world as a man or work with men or male authority figures, because he has been taught to think men are enemies and men aren't allies or people he needs the help of. And in order for a man to be able to work in this world, he has to be able to learn how to work under the authority of other men and work with male authority figures. That's something that your sensitive and enlightened man doesn't know how to do, because in his world, women are the ones with power. But in order for him to work in the world of business and survive, he needs to learn how to work with men. And this may be considered a sexist role by Halle Berry, but this is the reality of the real world. And sadly, Halle Berry's son is not learning about the reality of the real world. And that was clear to me from a video I saw of them on Instagram where the boy was wearing her boots. That's something a father would pull the boy to the side and say, no, you're not wearing your mama's boots. That's just not normal. And he's going to do that because he understands his boy has to go out into the world. But a boy raised in a single mother household, he doesn't know that that type of behavior is dysfunctional. And his mother will egg it on because she thinks it's cute. But what won't be cute is in 20 years when this young man does not know how to function and he becomes frustrated because he doesn't know how to do basic things like go out here on a job interview or go out here and socialize the way men do. And he winds up becoming one of these males out here like the Pookies, the Ray Rays, or even the more violent males like these mass shooters. This is what happens when there is no man in the home to teach manhood. The male winds up not knowing how to make things work in the real world, and they wind up falling apart. And again, I have seen so many men wind up in crisis because of this twisted frame of thinking of, oh, we're going to raise our boys to be this better man. But what happens is you wind up creating a beta male monster, and this beta male monster is one who is sooner or later going to short circuit, malfunction, and explode. And heaven help all of the people around us if this male winds up exploding around them. And I'm hoping that Oliver Martinez really gets out here and gets involved in his son's life the way Dondra T. Whitfield is involved in his son's life, because you need a man to teach a boy to be a man, and you need a man to teach certain things, because there are only certain things a man knows about life that will ensure your son will be able to survive. There are different gender roles, and there are male life skills, and many of our boys out here, they're really not learning, they're not really surviving and able to function because they never got male life skills. And over the course of this channel, I have shown numerous incidents of these males who never got their male life skills and how they can't function as men in the real world. And again, Oliver Martinez needs to step in here and get involved in his son's life, because Halle Berry right now is raising a male who has no understanding of what it means to be a man. If you want to learn more about the behaviors of beta males and how beta males become dysfunctional, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more men's issues videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers this April, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door must take on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess in paperback and e-readers this April.